You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Yesterday, Diddy released an official statement basically telling Comcast to stop using my damn name. Now, of course, Comcast has been fighting Byron Allen over his lawsuit against them for not carrying his networks. They went to the Supreme Court where the Supreme Court is going to rule on a portion of the lawsuit, which will determine whether the lawsuit can go forward and what legal argument he can use. So what Comcast has been doing, Comcast has been saying, hey, wait a minute. Look at all of these other black networks we provided opportunities to. They mentioned TV One. They mentioned Revolt. Of course, Diddy's network. They mentioned Aspire, which was given to Magic Johnson. My understanding, Aspire's now been sold. I'm trying to confirm that. I'll give more back details. They talked about Afro TV and some other black networks that they have actually put out there, as well as Latino networks. So Diddy dropped this letter. Let's just say he ain't too happy. My name and my network, Revolt, have been mentioned recently by Comcast in reference to the Comcast Byron Allen U.S. Supreme Court case as an example of Comcast's inclusive practices with respect to African-American-owned cable networks. While it is true that we are in business with Comcast, it is not accurate to use my name or my network as an example of inclusion. I do not want my name to be used inaccurately, so I must speak my truth. I also want to make clear that this case is now about much more than cable distribution. It's about the civil rights of millions of African Americans and other minorities. First, it's important that people really understand what's at stake. In its efforts to get the lawsuit filed by Byron Allen dismissed, Comcast has taken a legal approach that could weaken fundamental civil rights protections. I have a problem with this. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981, was designed to ensure black people are able to do business in this country and not be denied because of race. Comcast is arguing that this law only applies if racial discrimination is the only factor that leads to a refusal to do business, which would be extremely hard to prove. If they are successful, it will become much harder for any victim of discrimination to seek justice in court. By taking this stance in the Supreme Court, Comcast has put its legal tactics ahead of the rights of millions of Americans to be heard. This is not okay. Above anything else, my goal has always been to achieve true economic inclusion for black people. How can Comcast suggest that it champions diversity and inclusion if it attacks the laws that provide the foundation for economic inclusion? What good are any of their efforts if they are fighting to make it harder for victims of discrimination to be heard in court? Comcast has made this about much more than Byron Allen, and now the civil rights of my children and my community are at stake. To be clear, anything that makes it harder to fight against discrimination is wrong. Comcast is choosing to be on the wrong side of history. On Revolt, I can only share the truth of my experience. Starting an independent cable network is incredibly difficult and capital intensive. The start we received from Comcast, which was a condition of the United States government approval for Comcast to acquire NBC Universal, was important. But it is not the level of support needed to build a successful African-American-owned network. Not even close. Since that launch, our relationship has not grown, and Revolt is still not carried by Comcast in the most affordable packages, nor is Revolt available in all of the markets that would enable us to serve our target audience. Comcast spends billions of dollars on content network every year, but just a few million go to African-American-owned networks like Revolt. That is unacceptable. Supporting diversity and economic inclusion requires a real partnership. The only way black-owned networks grow and thrive is with meaningful and consistent economic support. Otherwise, they are set up to fail. Revolt has never been in a position to truly compete on a fair playing field because it has not received the economic and distribution support necessary for real economic inclusion. Our relationship with Comcast is the illusion of economic inclusion. Rather than using this case to diminish the civil rights protections of millions of Americans, Comcast should use this as an opportunity to listen to a community it relies on and, above all, do better. That was Diddy. That was yesterday. Well, today, Paula Madison, one of the owners of the Africa Channel and a former NBC Universal executive, issued her own statement. Quote, The Africa Channel's relationship with Comcast has been cordial and at times even jovial, but our economic relationship cannot be described as a good one. Yes, Comcast is distributing TAC in business since 2005, and my family's investment business is the largest shareholder to about 4 million subscribers, but it has not meaningfully expanded our subscriber base beyond about 2 million Comcast subscribers. In 2011, during the Memorandum of Understanding process, TAC requested that Comcast count it among the 3 channels it will launch, believing those new channels would be distributed to tens of millions of Comcast subscribers. Because TAC was already carrying approximately 2 million Comcast households, TAC was denied and told we were ineligible. Indeed, Comcast is the largest distributor of our small, independent cable network. At that time, Comcast assured the leaders of the NAACP, National Action Network, and the National Urban League that Comcast would increase TAC's subscriber count from 2 million to 6 million, which for a small, independent cable network would have resulted in a palpable economic boost. Eventually, TAC received just half of the promised increase. Since then, TAC has been in conversations with Comcast regarding the additional cable carriage. We have been told that carrying TAC on demand might be a possible solution. The representative said Comcast is considering networks with 0 to very low license fees. And so with virtually no leverage, we offered to reduce our carriage fee or even agree to a flat fee in exchange for wider distribution. We still believe that a loss in carriage revenues would be offset by increased advertising revenue generated by a larger subscriber base. But Comcast has consistently dismissed those requests. TAC has been an extraordinarily good partner by supporting all of Comcast's multicultural initiatives, such as sponsoring the Adunde Festival, the largest African gathering in Philadelphia, home of Comcast, as well as other Xfinity VOD marketing initiatives targeting the African-American community, but to no meaningful reciprocity. Although Comcast has not shut out TAC, Comcast has not been a good business partner. With an unkept yet repeated promise by Comcast of 4 million additional subscribers, it's inaccurate to include TAC in any grouping of Black-owned independent networks, which would typify the Comcast business relationship as good or in any way proactive. During the MOU process, I met with Chicago Congressman Bobby Rush as part of the congressional approval process. We met in his D.C. office, and he asked me to assure him that Comcast will continue the innovative and meaningful progress in diversity and inclusion that, as NBCU's EVP and Chief Diversity Officer, I had led at NBCU. I assured Congressman Rush that I did not know if the Comcast folks would do so and certainly had no way of predicting this. I did say that GE, NBCU's parent company, was an industry leader regarding diversity and inclusion, and that NBCU was an industry leader regarding diversity and inclusion, and that Comcast was promising Congress that it would work for greater economic success for the African American community, as stated by the commitments regarding procurement, banking, employment, etc. I said that I was meeting with him as one of my assigned responsibilities to fulfill what was needed to secure for Comcast the government approval to acquire and own NBCU. I said I was taking Comcast at its word. Launching these Black entrepreneurs' new cable networks without meaningful distribution and real economic inclusion, in my opinion, would result in a business model fraught with frustration and near futility. As the NBCU team leader who worked on and negotiated the MOU with the African American civil rights leaders, separately I had raised with Comcast that without a guaranteed subscriber count giving the Black entrepreneurs significant revenue and profit, the launch of these channels would not help them achieve success in business. Indeed, as an owner of the Africa Channel, I recused myself from any Comcast TAC discussions, but I also knew from my experience that without the key components of a guaranteed number of subscribers and revenue, running a profitable cable network would be very problematic. I shared these concerns with Comcast that the African American networks would be positioned to fail, and Comcast made it clear that it was only committed to launching these networks and not giving them the necessary distribution and economic support to succeed. Period. None of the Black-owned networks sought cable carriage solely with Comcast. We all sought carriage on Time Warner, Charter, Cox, etc. However, Comcast was seeking to acquire one of the largest content creators in the world, NBC Universal. And for that reason, Congress legislated that Comcast enter the MOU. Comcast was bound by the agreement to launch the cable networks, but was not bound to distribute to a requisite number of household/subscribers, so the channels never had a good chance of having a profitable and successful business. The amount of money black cable network owners get from their business relationship with Comcast can only be characterized as very small. In fact, Comcast spends in excess of $12 billion in licensing cable networks, of which black-owned networks receive a negligible amount. Because the Africa Channel has been included in Comcast citations, which suggested that we are in a good business relationship, I'm writing this statement to set the record straight. I felt compelled to speak up and tell the truth for many reasons, especially after reading the falsehood spread by Brian Roberts and David Cohen of Comcast. As someone who was a corporate insider and helped to craft the MOU, I can honestly say that after reading Sean Diddy Combs' official statement about Comcast, he has every reason to feel the way he does. In fact, I considered some weeks ago filing an amicus brief to Byron Allen's lawsuit, but after communicating with my fellow Vassar College alum Sherilyn Eiffel of the Legal Defense Fund, I decided not to do so. I'm convinced there are a number of amicus briefs filed with SCOTUS that I believe make a positive and convincing argument that his case must be allowed to continue. I also spoke with National Association of Black Journalists President Dorothy Tucker, expressing my great concern that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 would be gutted by Comcast and U.S. Attorney General Barr. So I encourage NABJ, of which I'm a lifetime member, to speak out, and indeed NABJ has done so. After watching Comcast's actions regarding the statute, I am now convinced that I have to speak up. Again, this is the reason I am writing this statement.
Well, that's a mouthful, two mouthfuls. I think what these folks are talking about is just the way this firm wants to use them, right, to really browbeat this other black man into giving up his case, or at least beat him in court by saying, hey, I got these other black people, there's nothing to see here. And what they're saying is, actually, you have not even followed through on your commitments to us, so don't use us this way, in part because what they want to do, what Comcast is seeking to do, is basically say, unless we have said we want to keep all the black people from doing business, then there's no case here, which essentially means that there is no law here, and there's no protection here, because it's not just about discriminatory outcomes. It's like, I have to prove the intent, which I think is a complete violation of the spirit of the law. And I think you have folks who are looking at themselves in a powerful position, and actually Comcast emboldened and empowered them by using them as your sort of markers and the people who define your diversity initiatives. And those folks are saying, wait a minute, Comcast actually hasn't done what not only they promised us, they haven't done what they promised Congress, that they have actually been in violation of their agreements with us. So Byron Allen is just sort of the latest manifestation of the ways in which Comcast wants to continue to do business, and we're not going to allow ourselves to be used to oppress another black man and keep him from his opportunity.
But not just black. Robert Rodriguez, his network, the El Rey Television Network, which Comcast launched in 2010, this is what he said on Friday, quote, while we are grateful for the opportunity Comcast gave us as the first distributor to launch our networks to service our communities, we want to be very clear that they had significantly more to gain financially. That's what he told Cable Facts Daily, and he was agreeing with Sean Diddy Combs. But here's the thing, Ray, that also has to be done here. The MOU that was signed by those civil rights organizations, you needed business people negotiating those. You needed people who understood the industry negotiating those. Because if anybody who knew the industry, they would have said, no, you got to guarantee distribution. See, just saying you can have a record label is one thing. But if you got no access to the places that are going to play your stuff, it don't matter. And that's the real deal here. And this is no disrespect to any of our civil rights organizations. But I will dare say this. The problem with that MOU was it was weak. You cannot say, hey, just launch a network. No, you got to say, no, not just launch a network, carry them on all of your systems, and don't put them on the upper tiers, put them on the lowest tier, because BET is the only black network that is on the basic tier because they were the first. That's it. And so what happens is, I know for a fact when I was at TV One, they will put the black networks on the tier as with HBO and Showtime. So that means that black people, to get the black networks, had to pay the highest cable bills in order to see us. So even though we were in 55, 58 million homes, we were available in that many homes. But how many could afford us?
How many could afford us? And then further, how many are accessing it, right? We all know that when we sit and flick through our cable channels, there's perhaps a range of channels in which folks traditionally move through, whatever your normal programming may be, likely your local channels, and then some extras as well. But when you put some of the other channels in channel 1,694 and all the other channels are 210 through 211 through 290, that changes the way folks will view things. That will change your advertising revenue. That will change a host of things. Further, Comcast has demonstrated a pattern that it is willing to use black networks, black media, black content creators time and again to serve whatever aims they have. Whether that aim is an acquisition of a larger property, whether that aim is to dispel a lawsuit that they're fighting against, Comcast has time and again shown that they are willing to profile, highlight, and put on Front Street their black friends, so to speak. And at no point do they, forgive me for going, at no point do they ever show any meaningful interest to develop, nurture, and curate black content, but they want to share their black friend. And I like that Diddy statement is so eloquent, so well articulate, and so knowledgeable about both the law, about the application of carriage, about the application of content. And as Diddy says in his raps, it's very true about his PR statements. Don't worry if I write PR statements, I write checks.
My question is, what would happen if all the black media company owners like yourself, all these moguls, what would happen if we started our own network?
No, but that, no.
The same problem that we're having right now?
No.
The same problem we're having right now.
The issue is not starting your own network. That's not the issue.
It's distribution.
They started the networks.
Okay.
It's distribution.
Yes.
See, you can start a network.
So we still have to go through somebody like Comcast.
That's the distribution network.
So they're the only ones.
So unless unless you're talking about the Time Warner type deal, the DirecTV, AT&T.
Here's what you have. You have Comcast, which is the largest cable provider in the country. Okay, by 21 million homes. You have Charter. Okay, they absorbed what used to be Time Warner Cable. Then you have DirecTV. Then you have Dish. Those are your satellite providers.
Right.
Then you have a whole bunch of other smaller cable operators. That's what you have right now. So you have to go to each one of them to get a carriage deal. So you can sign a deal with a Comcast that it's called not an MOS, but multiple operator system. So you can sign a deal with Comcast, but what we had to do is we had to go to each individual market. So what happens is in cities, a cable network has the cable franchise.
Okay.
That's granted by the city government. And so in that city, the city council votes on, you get the city's cable franchise, just one. Now, it was a lot of drama when Verizon Fios came in, and then when AT&T Uverse came in because they were not cable, they were fiber optic. The cable systems were fighting them, saying, no, y'all got to go through the same approval process as us. That's why in some places you had access to Verizon Fios, AT&T Uverse, as well as the local cable deal. And so then what happened, and that typical deal, it may run anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Okay? So they essentially are the exclusive provider for that market. That's it. And so some markets are Charter markets. Some markets are Comcast markets. Then some of the other cable companies. And so we had to go to individuals. So when the Washington Post owned a cable system, it was in Mississippi. It was a city was 70% black. The Donald Graham was next door neighbors with the CEO of TV One. So they kept telling us on a corporate level, hey, we got no problem with TV One. We go down to Mississippi, and the local general manager like, ain't nobody asking for TV One. Now, we knew they were lying. It's 70% black. But that local GM decided whether or not we would do a deal. So we would have to put on events, and we would have to draw up, interest among the public. But then here's the problem. If you got caught encouraging folks to write in, they could ban you from other networks across the country. Doc, I'm trying to tell you.
Wow.
TV, you gotta understand, I know this because I had to live it.
Right.
TV One, Jonathan Rogers, the founding CEO of TV One, is the first CEO of TV One, sent me across America to do events in black communities to get black folks to request TV One. I went to Rochester, New York. I went to Buffalo, New York. I went to Fort Worth, Texas. I went to San Antonio. I went to Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Savannah, Georgia. Went to all around the country, putting on these events. This is who we are to get black folks interested. And we have to do all of that. Now, Comcast could have said, we're going to put you on all of our systems.
Kill all that in one move.
So that's also. So you have Revolt, to my understanding, not even being carried in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And Revolt's like, hello, all the black folks in Philly?
Yep.
And so that's what you got going on here. So it's been very interesting. And so I'll say this here. For Diddy and for Paula Madison with the Africa Channel to drop these letters and lay this out, if I'm Comcast, I'm like, damn, we are not winning this war. And if you look on Twitter, Comcast has been loading up on tweets showing all their multicultural efforts. These letters and what Robert Rodriguez had to say, trust me, is not going to see. Now, granted, the people who did Afro TV also wrote a letter praising their working relationship with Comcast. But these other folks who Comcast has been touting, been like, nah, that ain't the case.
And that's what happens though. You put these people's name out there, and now people are like, oh, now we got to respond and tell the truth of what the relationship is. They have not done what they promised. Exactly, they haven't done what they promised, and what they want to do is use us to harm this other black man, and we're not going to be used in that way, because the real sort of power in this moment is not in sort of siding with Comcast and staying quiet, right? It's siding with this person, because everybody has a lot to gain here, right? It's not just Byron. Absolutely, they've been affected by it.
And I think, and people also don't. I mean, the reality is that look, this is a fight between Byron Allen and Comcast. But what it also is exposing are some of the underbelly of what happens in the industry.
Absolutely.
And that's what people don't understand, because your carriage and your subscription fees is what drives your revenue. And so what happens is when you sign a cable, people don't realize, when you sign a cable deal, some of these cable deals are 5 years. Some of them are 7 years. So what happens is you negotiate a deal with the Comcast or Charter or anyone. And let's say you say it's Comcast and they say, okay, 10 million subs. Okay? Get a calculator out. You go, all right, so you're going to pay us 10 cents per sub. So that's 10 million subs. Again, if it's 10 million times that 10 cents, that means we making $1 million every month. That means we're getting solely on subscription fees 12 million a year. That means that if I sign a deal, it's a 5-year carriage deal, I can go to the bank and say, I'm getting $60 million over the next 5 years. Now, I need $200 million for programming to run my network. That's what the carriage fee battle is all about, and that's what people are now understanding the intricacies of the market. And so when a person says, "Well, damn, man, I would love to have TV1. I would love to have, Revolt, but damn, you're in that upper tier, so I can't afford that. So I'm gonna pay for that basic tier or the one right above." I never could see your network because you're forcing me. The cable system are placing them on the upper tier by design.
Well,
final comment, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, rarely in history of ever has someone been one of the folks that are being sued in a lawsuit. And then when they get dropped from that, do they join an amicus brief that supports the people that were suing them? That's what happened here with the NAACP. Because Byron Allen was alleging that the NAACP and the other civil rights organizations, in signing the MOU, would, to your point, Roland, have been negligent in their duties to ensure the protections of civil rights. And so once the NAACP was dropped from that, now we see the NAACP signing the amicus brief. That's what we see Ms. Madison alluding to. And lastly, one of the things that Comcast definitely doesn't want to have happen is if this case goes forward, there will be depositions, right? And so no one in the history of ever wants to sit for a deposition.
Because if you get subpoenaed, Diddy,
if they can dismiss this, if they can dismiss this, that's fine. But all that stuff that Diddy's talking about, all that stuff that Ms. Madison, Mr. Rodriguez are saying in their statements, those things become unsworn under oath, and all of Comcast's
But they could have fixed it. They could have fixed it back in the Ninth Circuit. When they lost, they could have said, all right, we're going to go ahead, we lost, we're going to pay you and be done with it. They decided decided to challenge it.
Well,
How long have you been observing capitalism in America?
Right.
When do people lose? When do people lose and go, you beat me?
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, as the marijuana momentum continues, our friends at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of the great opportunity, you better do it real quick because it won't last much longer. If you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. Now, folks, it's an opportunity for you to invest, and that's where 420 Real Estate comes in. The business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. As hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream. Now, the best part is you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200. That's right, $200 up to 10 grand. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game, folks, and get in the game now. Back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.